Hi everyone, thank you so much for giving us the presentation to talk today. It's a pleasure to talk about metal organic frameworks, MOFs, as Marcel has introduced, and I'll talk as well about our company, MOF Technologies, what we do and what our role is within the Genesis project. So just very briefly, for those who haven't met us yet, MOF Technologies is a small SME based in Belfast in Northern Ireland. So it's at the north of the island of Ireland. And for those who haven't been here, this is what the city looks like. And hopefully once COVID is finally over, we invite everyone to come and see it. It's a vibrant city with two big yellow cranes where you can see it from everywhere in the city. And this is where the Titanic was built. And on a brighter note is also where Lord Kelvin was born, and due to his work in physical chemistry, that's what units we use for absolute temperatures these days. So in terms of who we are at MOF Technologies, we are a growing team of MOF experts. Some of us have spent already more than 15 years making and developing MOFs. We are highly skilled problem solvers. We are innovators. And I think the proof of that is the 5 patent families that we have secured over the years. These are around preparing MOFs, shaping MOFs, modifying MOFs, and ultimately what it gives us is the freedom to operate and be able to not overstep in anyone's IP, which is one of the major challenges in this field as well. We have worked with a great variety of commercial partners over the years, and we are also very proud to be at the leading edge of the development of the MOF field by collaborating in 5 European Commission-backed projects. So our mission as a company is to develop MOF products in a cost-effective and scalable manner. And this is ultimately because of our MOF expertise and all our patented technology that we bring to the table. So very briefly, what we do at MOF Technologies is we develop MOF-based applications. And the reason behind that is because we bring a unique combination of skill sets and capabilities. We are the MOF manufacturers. We have producing MOFs on ton scale for various years now. We also produce MOFs not only in powder form, but in shape form, which I'll talk later on the importance of that. And also we have the capabilities in-house to check how these MOFs perform and how to make them work for real applications. So when we started the company 8 years now, we had to bring these MOFs to the market. They were just an academic exercise, and we successfully developed technology to do that. Since then, we have exported MOFs to over 26 countries through various collaboration and sales. And another point worth mentioning is we developed the first commercial application of MOFs back in 2016. So just very briefly, for those who haven't heard of MOFs before, metal organic frameworks, or MOFs, are highly porous 3D structures. So they are gas adsorbents that, interestingly enough, can be tuned and can be modified for specific gas molecules. So MOFs are made of metal units and organic units that are linked together to form these 3D structures. And the possibility to tailor them and make them bespoke by choosing the metals and the ligands allow them to be ideal for storing gases, separating gases, and deliver gases very efficiently. 2 of the main properties that they have is that they are extremely selective. Again, because we can tune, we can design the pore geometry, and the pore chemistry of these materials allows them to be extremely selective. And at the same time, their really high surface areas allow them to offer really high gas capacity. In addition, because of their structure and their chemistry, they offer the possibility to store unstable gases very safely. So why are these MOFs, why are these materials so interesting? Is because they bring advantages compared to traditional adsorbents and traditional carbon capture solutions. So what I'm trying to show here today, I thought it would be very interesting to just briefly highlight some of the issues of the solutions that are currently being investigated and how MOFs address these issues. So we can see, compared to the liquid amine solutions, MOFs offer enhanced regeneration energy, lower cost to regenerate the materials, and this is because instead of chemisorption, we have physical sorption interactions, and also as well, once these amines are used regularly and systematically, they start to degrade, producing corrosive waste, and this is something MOFs can greatly overcome. By comparing MOFs and activated carbons, we can see how MOFs, because of their porosity and their chemical and pore functionality, we see how MOFs offer a greater uptake capacity and greater selectivity compared to activated carbons. And we can also see how MOFs also, because of their surface areas, have greater uptake compared to zeolites. And importantly as well, they have been demonstrated to work in the presence of moisture. And as probably 99% of people know here in the table, 99% of industrial applications include moisture within the gas stream, so it's a big challenge. So as I said earlier, what we do at MOF Technologies is help companies go from problem to product. And in order to develop these MOF products, what we do is we combine 4 areas of expertise. So we are uniquely placed to produce MOFs, shape them into the right formulation and geometry, and then we can perform the test to see how they actually work, do any tweaks, any enhancements that they need to be done in order to be incorporated. And finally, we go back to production where we can produce them on ton scale just to produce them at the commercial quantities required. So I'm gonna talk briefly about each of those pieces. So the first one is MOF production. So when we started the company in 2012, as I said earlier, MOFs were an academic exercise that you couldn't buy them anywhere. So we scratched our heads and we came up with a continuous method of producing MOFs that allowed us to produce them in a very cost-effective way and in a very quality, producing very high quality materials. This has been already verified and certified by our ISO 9001 accreditation. And we have managed to demonstrate as well very successfully that this new way of making MOFs is completely scalable. We have built our pilot plant facilities. We are producing them at ton scale, and we have been doing that for various years. Just very briefly about mechanochemistry. This is the technique that we use to make MOFs, and this is one of our unique selling points and what gives us the freedom to operate. And mechanochemistry, what it offers is the possibility to react the metal and the ligand components in solid form with no solvent or very, very small amount of solvent. And what that means is there's less waste, there's less cost, and there's less post-processing involved compared to traditional methods where chemical solvents or even water are used in large quantities. So ultimately, what we have demonstrated is that this is the greenest method to produce MOFs and the cheapest method to produce MOF. And this is why the UPAC, the International Association, has accredited us or has nominated us as a disruptive technology for the 21st century. They have acknowledged our green credentials and our efficiency and energy and chemical efficiency for this process. Applying this technology to a variety of metals, a variety of ligands, we have been producing MOFs over the years for various projects, various partners. And what we have now is one of the largest MOF catalogs available. If these are some of the MOFs that we make currently, there's other ones that are not here. So I always would recommend, if you're interested in MOFs or purchasing MOFs or introducing into your processes, please contact us and get in touch to see how we can help. Another very important point is MOFs themselves. We had to come up with a method to make them, and we did that quite successfully. But then we realized once MOFs were produced in powder form, that was a great achievement. But in order to be able to commercialize these materials, in order to introduce them in products, in pilot plants, in prototypes, they had to be shaped, they had to be formulated and shaped into right forms, geometries to be able to be incorporated. So what we did then is we developed our own shaping methodology that is now patented as well. And what we can do is we can tailor the shapes, and that means the geometry, that means the size, that means the strength to the specific application. Each application is different, each application has different working conditions, And in order to overcome back pressures and problem with like just basically crumbling, we have to develop ways to tune the shapes without compromising the porosity, which is the intrinsic property of the MOF. And ultimately, what we have done is improve the volumetric capacity of the materials without sacrificing the porosity. So here at the bottom, you can see some of the shapes that we currently produce at MOF Technologies. We have applied MOFs as coating in different substrates. We have produced spheres, extrudates, granules, discs, and obviously we are still producing powder as well. Another area of expertise that we have in-house is the possibility to evaluate the real performance of MOFs under real conditions. And we identify this as a major need because there's data about MOFs now in the literature, but mostly it all revolves around pure gas isotherms, pure gas measurements that give an indication on how the MOF is going to perform. But we know in most industrial conditions, they are not pure gases, they are mixtures of gases of different compositions. There's presence of moisture and humidity of different and various degrees. There's different pressures, there's different partial pressures, there's different temperatures. And what we did is we built our own application suite where we can actually recreate those conditions. We can tune compositions, temperatures, pressures, and ultimately come up with the real performance of the material if it was to be put into the real application. And what that gives us is the best tools to select the ideal MOFs and also to improve them and make sure they work. So in terms of our application suite, we combine our physical characterization of materials, which includes XRD, IR, TGA, with gas sorption evaluation techniques, and that includes temperature, swing adsorption, pressure, swing adsorption, low and high sorption techniques, and we also have dynamic vapor sorption and dynamic gas breakthrough techniques, which become very complementary to give a real picture. The other part of the puzzle that I mentioned earlier is the possibility to enhance the properties of the MOFs. And this is because we have spent, as I was saying, more than 50 years working on these materials. We know very well how to make MOFs, how to store MOFs, how to activate MOFs, how to shape MOFs. And ultimately that gives us the possibility now, due to this like really real expertise, like how to actually fine tune the properties to make sure they work for real applications. So these are just 3 examples that we've been working on quite recently. So the first one, we worked with a company that needed MOFs with a particular stability requirement, and based on a different gas they were working on, we developed a new family of materials that were stabilized and were suitable for their application. We also have learned how to tweak the synthetic conditions and how to prepare MOFs in order to control their physical parameters, including the particle size, which, as we know, is very, very important for including them in membrane sensors and biotech, which I'll talk later. And then also, by understanding how to make MOFs, we can change the chemistry, we can change the properties, and we can functionalize those materials to make them more suitable for specific applications. So very briefly, what we do at MOF Technologies is we work all the way through from low TRLs and development projects at concept and feasibility studies up to pilot demonstrations and ultimately producing materials for the products at a high TRL 7 and 8. So what we do is we combine our product development pedigree with our MOF expertise and patented technology to bring MOF-based solutions to reality, to the market. So the reason why I think most of us are here today is to find solutions for carbon capture. As Marcel has already introduced and showed this graph, we are all aware how CO2 emissions are becoming a big problem and how they are expected to increase global temperature over the next years. So obviously the ideal solution is to move to non-CO2 emitting sources of energy, greener energy sources. But we know until that transition is complete, there is a requirement for carbon capture, sequestration, and utilization solutions are needed. And at the moment, as Marcel talked as well, the main solution, the state of the art, is using liquid amine solutions. And the problem with them, as I mentioned earlier, is because they are corrosive, they are not stable, and they are quite difficult to regenerate. And this is why we can see now a general agreement of how solid adsorbents would be more efficient for CO2 capture. And this is because mostly they are non-corrosive, they are energy efficient, they require less energy to be regenerated, and overall they provide a cheaper solution. So among all those solid adsorbents for CO2, MOFs offer unrivaled properties. And this is because MOFs have already demonstrated that they have the highest CO2 capacity known to date, and they also offer the highest selectivities. As I mentioned earlier as well, it's very, very interesting that MOFs can absorb CO2 even in the presence of humidity. And ultimately, because we talked about this earlier as well, like because they can bound CO2 molecules just through physical interactions, they require half of the energy compared to the state-of-the-art amines. So in case people are wondering why are MOFs showing these incredible properties for CO2 capture, is because of their intrinsical properties, their physical and chemical properties inside the pores that allow them to have these really good CO2 capacities and selectivities. So here are some of the examples, because we can change the chemistry and the composition inside of the MOF. We can generate unsaturated metal sites where CO2 molecules can bind quite effectively. We can also play with electronegativity, introducing heteroatoms that can help position and bind the CO2 molecules. We also can play with the hydrophobicity and hydrophilicity of the MOFs and the chemistry inside, and that's very important, as I mentioned earlier, in applications where moisture might be present. And then also we have the possibility to functionalize some of the ligands, and therefore functionalizing some part of the MOF to increase their affinity for CO2 molecules. So, as we talked already, and as Marcel has shown you, MOFs have been selected. These are the reasons why MOFs have been selected for the Genesis project. And this is to help develop a new generation of polymeric membranes, where we are introducing metal organic frameworks to increase their selectivity and to increase the efficiency, the separation efficiency of the membranes. And this again is because of the properties of the materials themselves. Our role within the project has been to prepare MOFs to be introduced into the membranes. We've done that alongside with ICM2. They have used their solvent-based and sprite train technique, and we have been using mechanochemistry and extrusion techniques to prepare the MOFs. And ultimately, the big challenge in this project was to prepare the MOFs and to prepare them in the appropriate particle size range, understanding that we have to produce MOFs with specific physical properties. And this is because ultimately, once the MOFs are produced, they have to be dispersed and introduced into polymeric matrices. And in order to facilitate their dispersion, make sure there's no defects, make sure the selectivity is still there, we have been tasked with producing MOFs with very, very small particle sizes. So what we have developed overall is a green method using mechanochemistry to produce nano MOFs, and it's a scalable synthesis. We are producing now at the kilogram scale, and ultimately, as you can see here, we can tune the properties of the materials going from 8 micrometers to 50, below 50 nanometers, sometimes 20 nanometers, in a very effective way and without sacrificing the crystallinity of the surface area. And this is because our experience in making MOFs, we can do small adjustments to the recipes and get the materials into the right form. I also wanted to mention today that there are other approaches to introduce metal organic frameworks for helping reduce CO2 emissions. We have been part of the gramophone project as well, where we have developed MOF graphene oxide composites very effectively. And interestingly enough, what we have managed to demonstrate is that these MOF geomaterials can dissolve the CO2 molecules once it has absorbed CO2 more effectively and with less energy using microwave radiation. So these are very, very interesting results that help the kinetics of the process and ultimately helps the overall cost efficiency of the process. So this was a really great achievement of the consortium. Now we've patented this technology, and hopefully once it's all granted, we'll be able to talk about it and explore it a bit more. I also wanted to mention another approach that we are using at MOF Technologies for CO2 capture, and is using directly the solid MOFs in pressure swing adsorption units at large scale to remove CO2 emissions from energy intensive industries. So this is part of the MOF for Air project, where we are producing MOFs in shaped form with the right crash strength at the 100 to 100 kilogram scale to be introduced in pilot plants across Europe within the next year or two. So ultimately, I hope today I've shown you the interesting properties of the MOFs, how they can work very effectively for gas separation, storage, and utilization applications. I've talked today about CO2, but they can also be very, very useful for methane or hydrogen applications. And overall, I hope I've managed to highlight how we have unrivaled MOF expertise. We have our own patented technology to produce MOFs in the most cost effectively and the most cheaper way possible. And we have demonstrated this synthesis to ton scale of both powdered MOFs, but also shaped MOFs, and ultimately how we have collaborated in both low TRL and development projects up to pilot scale and prototyping. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.